Hi, I'm Bob Ethington.
And I'm Nick Nicholas.
And this is From Akron and Beyond. Well, hi there, folks. Nick and I are back again with our latest episode, and we're very excited about this one as we continue our, what would you say, Nick, our occasional venture into the world of the arts?
Yeah, particularly people that are from Akron and are still here.
Well, right. We haven't let them leave.
No.
And one of these people that is John Comunale. He's artist in a sculpture. Hi, John.
Good morning.
And welcome to the show. John is, if whether or not you've ever, you know of him personally and specifically, if you live in Akron and you've ever been downtown or a lot of places in Akron, you have seen his work. He's a public artist, but he also does a lot of other things as well. And we had just, for a while, have been thinking about having him on the show and kind of, investigating the life of an artist in Akron. It has to be interesting, and I'm sure challenging as well. So again, John, welcome, and we're glad to have you here. Now, I guess my first question will be very, very general, which is, are you from Akron originally?
Yep. I've been here. Firestone High School graduate, 1968.
All right. Wow, okay.
Went to Fairlawn School in Litchfield. And Firestone, I think, was the second year that when we started there, that was the second year of classes there.
Oh, really? Okay.
65, 66.
Mm-hmm.
So I graduated in 68.
Okay. And were your parents from this area?
My mom and dad both grew up here.
Okay.
My grandpa worked for Goodyear Tire and Rubber.
That was my next question. The rubber company people, yeah.
And then I ended up in the B.F. Goodrich factory here. So.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
My dad's parents were at Comunale, mechanical contractors, fire protection. They've got trucks everywhere.
Oh,
okay,
that's
sure. Yeah.
They were the founders, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
So
yeah, the Comunale name is sort of known in Akron.
Yeah, big time.
There's Frank Comunale. I know him because I worked for the Akron Summit County Public Library, and he was on the board there for a while. And
great guy, my cousin Frank.
Frank, yes. And he is a good guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I understand that you and Nick know each other. So, right? You guys go back a little bit?
Well, so through mutual friends, way back. And you know what's cool, too? A few months ago, we had...
Sounds like a big secret here.
No.
I didn't know I was digging into something.
No, it was some mutual friends from the old days. But
right.
a few months ago, we had Scott Phillips on here, a local mural artist, and he works at the Massillon Museum with my daughter. And he rents space from you, right? His studio is like part of
inside of mine. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. No, great folks, Scott and Sandy.
Great artists.
Just the most wonderful people on earth. I can't say enough good about them.
So you being in a B.F. Goodrich building and you're subletting space, you must have a heck of a lot of space in that, huh?
I got 3,200 square feet.
Oh.
It's nice space, 24-foot ceilings and big open girder trusses in the ceiling. And I've been there since 91.
Oh, wow.
So, long time.
So when I was doing a little bit of reading on some of the sculptures that you do, some are like huge, so you would need, tall, so you need large space.
Yeah.
Well, let's back this up a little bit. So you come from a family, worked in the rubber companies and stuff, and moved on. Obviously, various family members have moved on to wide-ranging activities and endeavors and achievements. Art is an interesting pursuit, though, for anyone that does it. I mean, I'm semi-involved in that just by being a musician. Nick is as well. as a lyricist and singer for his band, the Bizarros. But art strikes me as I'm just very curious. How did you originally get the bug? I mean, when were you first starting to create things and thinking this is something you'd like to do with your life?
Well, I think I started taking art classes. I still got a piece or two that I made when I was maybe 6 or 7
Wow.
at the old Akron Art Museum, which was across from the new one.
Yeah.
Across Market Street.
Sure.
So my mom would drag my brother and I down there, and we'd make clay stuff. And well, I still got a little ceramic head that I made. I called the Barber of Seville. It's like some Italian-looking guy with a big mustache. It's pretty cool to still have.
Sure. Yeah.
But then I always was making things. My mom was real supportive in anything we wanted to do like that. My dad wanted me to be a dentist, and that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So, but I just always made things. I did a lot of construction work in the meantime.
Right.
Being an artist is it's a rough way to make a living.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's a rough way to make a living.
Yeah.
So I was always able to do functional work along with my art, so that I could, keep the bills paid in the meantime.
Right.
So it's feast or famine still.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, even people see my stuff all over town. It's still tough.
Yeah.
It's not like you're not building a huge sculpture every week and selling
No,
it.
right.
Yeah.
It's sometimes the big ones are few and far between.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've thought about this a lot because I've been through a little bit of famine lately, and it's what do I like about this? Why do I keep doing this? And it's it's kind of the excitement of what's going to bail my ass out next.
Yeah.
As a not nothing like the excitement of how am I going to pay my rent, but
Right.
who's going to help me out this time?
Right. Right.
So, and things have just come out of the blue. I always say one phone call can change it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So you kind of mentioned like that from very young age, you were kind of making things. So was sculpture always what appealed to you? And did you ever paint or do any other kind of art?
I've done some 2D work, like in college. I did a little bit. I had a hard time with color. I mean, I know what I like, but I really don't know how to make it. Whereas anything 3D, I can make that happen.
Right. You see it.
So I always gravitated. I was a wood carver for years.
Oh, wow.
Did cigar store Indians and totem poles and
man.
busts of Sitting Bull and famous Indians. And then I was living in North Carolina at the time, or at a time, the 80s pretty much, I was in North Carolina. And I did a lot of sculpture work there, wood sculpture, signs, signage, carved signs. I was in Tucson for 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
In the 70s, did a lot of wood carving there, mesquite Indians.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a great time of life.
Wow.
Yeah. Fun times, huh?
But we were...
when you're younger, the whole feast and famine thing isn't quite
no,
as
it's
hard.
not so
right?
important. Right. I didn't even have car insurance, I don't think. People ask me if I had insurance. I said, I got a roll of toilet paper in the glove compartment. So, it was a lot easier, and that was a blast. I mean,
Right.
we just had so much fun. I knew when I lived in Tucson, everywhere I lived in California for a while, every time I moved somewhere, I knew 20 people from Akron.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Like when I moved to Tucson, my brother was down there going to school with a bunch of people from Akron. So it was a good time.
Yeah. And,
But then I moved back to Akron for a couple of years, and then I moved down to North Carolina,
okay.
about 20 acres.
Where in North Carolina? Just curious.
Outside of Winston-Salem.
Okay.
Knoxville is the biggest town close by. Okay. I mean, we were 20 minutes from a gallon of milk. It was remote.
Yeah.
Now there's sidewalks and everything.
Right. Yeah.
But at that time, I was carving wood and doing construction work. If I'd get an art job, I'd do that on the side.
Yeah.
But people started complaining that the wood would crack.
Oh.
So I went to Sears and I bought a cutting torch and a arc welder and read the manuals and started making stuff out of metal.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of shifted gears.
Right. Do you remember the first money you made in art?
From art. I had a traveling flexible shaft tool, or like a Dremel tool. When I was first in California, we'd go to Macbeth Hardwoods there in Berkeley,
Okay.
and they had all these different wild-ass woods from all over the world.
Wow.
And I had a little stand. I'd make pipes and spoons and whatever I could pawn
Right.
off on the public. I had a little booth in front of the Bank of America in the front of the Berkeley campus, and I would set up there every morning and peddle my wares.
Right.
So, but I could travel and do that. One time I went to New Orleans one year, and I took my stuff with me, and I ended up staying 6 weeks for Mardi Gras. So
There you go.
big fun.
Wow.
But I was able to make a buck or two while I was there.
Sure. Right.
So it was really that was a good trip.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just intrigued by. I know how musicians make money or don't.
We know how they don't.
Yeah,
Right.
but the world of art to me is just, it's fascinating because you have to have a lot of self-discipline, I would think. I mean, are you working always for something, or are you working every day just on something that you're inspired by or just feel like making? I'm just
Almost
curious.
never anymore.
Right.
I mean, I've made so many things
Sure. Yeah.
that I've kind of passed up somewhat these burning desires to make things because I've made them,
Right,
for the last 50 years.
Right.
But I still have things that I'd like to make, but you get so consumed by that rent coming at you, and the many bills, and I raised a family, so it was always difficult.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's one thing if you're on your own, right? Yeah,
right.
footloose or whatever. But if you have people relying on you, it's different.
But yeah, making a buck was always hard. And to get back to what you were saying about, do I get to make things that I really want to make? And hardly ever anymore.
Yeah.
But I do take great pleasure in making things for somebody else, even if it's. I love fixing things. I do a lot of antique restoration.
Oh, really?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I love to fix broken stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sundays I got a pile of busted ceramic whatever, so I glue it together and I have a blast.
Right.
So I do enjoy what I'm doing, no matter what it is. But one of the biggest things I love to do is somebody comes with an idea and turning that into reality.
Yeah.
And, taking out of their mind and putting it on the table or on the wall.
Now, do you... Oh, go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to ask you, I know we're going to get to this more detail later, but what you're most famous for, that beautiful clock on the Everett building.
Yeah.
Was that something...
Which is on Main and Market downtown.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you could describe that in a little bit, but my question was that something that you had a picture of what something on there was like before, or did you create that?
Well, Tony Tropy came to me many, many years ago, and I'd done a thing or two for him, and he talked about that he just got the Everett building, and he wanted to do something epic, and Tony, big art.
Yeah.
So I looked at those lions that are holding up that used to be the Akron School of Music.
Oh, yeah.
That building,
Yeah.
the Everett building, and there's a portico over top of the doors with a balcony on it. And there's big lion's heads on either side of it, underneath. And so I took those lion's heads and and Tony said, I'd like something to look like it's been there. So that's where I kind of started with the lion's heads. Mm-hmm. And we went through a lot of different phases of how I was going to have the whole thing cast out of aluminum and then bolted together. And we ended up with just structural steel and a lot of polymer additions with the details and stuff. Like the lion's heads were made out of a 4-part polymer mixture you pour into a mold.
Wow.
So I did the original sculpture of the heads out of clay, and then took a silicone rubber mold of those, and then built the heads from those molds, and then crafted the whole clock around it. It was an interesting process.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's been there for years now. It just seems like it's always been a part of Akron. 95.
95.
You know, it's funny, John, because I had worked downtown for years, and I remember going by one day and seeing that clock there. And I think my wife was with me, and I was like, I don't remember ever seeing that. And then I was like, well, it must have been there forever because, look, I mean, it's obviously part of the building.
That's what we were going for.
You succeeded because, I honestly, and then I was like, as I recall, she was like, no, that wasn't there. And then I'm like, well, it must have been there before, and they found it, and they brought it back and cleaned it up. I had a whole theory.
It's a home run on that one. No, that's great.
Yeah.
But it was such a process, and I finally got it finished, and we had a crane to lift it up, and it wouldn't go.
I'd be nervous at that point.
It wouldn't. We had it in a plywood box, and it was so windy that day. As we were taking the plywood off it. It took a sheet of plywood, a 4x8 sheet of plywood down the street. And we finally got it up in the air, and it wouldn't go on to it had big prongs like a plug that stuck out of the building that it plugged into.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't go all the way to the building because the crane was hooked to the top of it, and the soffits of the building going around the edge of the building kept the crane cable from going all the way. There was a hole that they drilled by mistake in the building. So there was an extra hole, it's like an 8-inch hole those prongs stuck out of. And we were able to put a rope through that, and there was 5 guys inside pulling on the rope.
Oh, my God.
And the guys in a bucket lift pushing on it up at the top.
Oh, boy.
And it finally went into place, and everybody inside on the rope fell over into the corner in a pile. It was pretty funny. And then one more thing on the whole, when we went to dedicate it, Tony said, we got to tarp it, which is always a nuisance because getting the tarp off of a sculpture. Well, it was another super windy day again, and the wind had that tarp plastered.
Yeah.
We had ropes that were just supposed to pull, and then the tarp would
just drop
to the ground beautifully
right.
that well. And we wanted to get some press, so we had Tom Sawyer, the congressman, and Mayor Don on the ropes. And this was a bad idea because we didn't get any coverage because they don't. And then we found out from the Beacon that they don't do political stuff. So we didn't get a picture of that. But anyway, they're holding these ropes and the wind's blowing everything. We finally got the tarp peeled off of it, and there was a big round light ball at the bottom, about 2 foot in diameter, and the tarp tore that off, and it flew down Main Street, headed north in the wind. Yeah. It was something.
Was that 29 years ago?
Yeah.
Wow.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So, as you've been discussing this particular sculpture, something that came to mind that I was wanting to ask anyway, so I'll ask now. By the way, this is from Akron and Beyond, and our guest on this episode is artist, sculptor. He's not a sculpture. He's actually a sculptor.
He's alive.
Yes, John Comunale. And we're talking about his work and just sort of the challenges and joys of being a working artist in Akron. And so, John, one of my questions for you is, how much of your work is collaborative? Like, as you were talking about that, you had various people helping you actually put that into place. When it comes to the actual sculpting that you're doing, the actual work artistic work you're doing, Do you have other people help you in any way, or or is it all you? I'm just curious.
Well, I always had, from as soon as I got enough work to afford a helper, I had one.
Yeah.
And then I usually kept somebody full time for many years. And as like with the clock, when it came down to the wire, I had 3 people,
Oh, wow.
working on it.
Yeah.
So I bring people in as I need them.
Right.
And then, what happens is I run out of work and I can't keep them.
Sure.
Right.
So
Right.
that luckily, well, I've had some that have been around 4 or 5 years. Dominic Falcione was a great helper of mine for some time and went on to do great things. I had another helper, and I would get a steady feed of students.
Yeah.
And like somebody wanted to come and work for me. They were excited about the whole thing.
Right.
And then when they'd finish school or move on, usually somebody a year, 2 years maybe, they'd move on. And then they would tell a friend of theirs, hey, John's looking for somebody. So I'd get somebody new. And it was great.
Yeah.
Dylan Collins, who's now worked for me for a couple of years, who's now the head of the sculpture department at the University of West Virginia in Morgantown. He's doing really great things, too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Mike Maris worked with me for a while.
Okay.
Mike was more like a tenant, like Scott and Phillips. But he would help me also on places where I needed it.
Right.
And I was always able to bring people in
Yeah.
when I needed, when my work.
Well, it just seems like particularly at the scale that you often work. And public art kinds of things can definitely need
I was
collaborators, not people. I mean, you're there, it's your vision, but they're helping you enable it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was fascinated too when I read a little piece that you you did some set pieces for Hollywood films.
Yeah.
Anything that we would know that you remember?
Oh, I did made some cool stuff for the Ninja Turtle movies. That was fun.
Yeah.
The first movie I did was called Mr. Destiny. And I was living in North Carolina. I was building houses, and it was getting to be winter, and it was getting slow. And through some friends, I got wind of this. They were putting this movie together, and I ended up applying for a carpenter job. I told them I did sculpture work. And as it turned out, in the movie sets, the carpenters are there the longest. So I could go in as a carpenter, and if sculpture work opened up, I could do that and go for a pay bump. And then when that was over, I could go back to being a carpenter and stay on a movie 3 months maybe. But yeah, so Mr. Destiny was really exciting because it was the first film I'd done, and it's hard work, not much glory involved in the behind the scenes work, but I was able to. I did a life-size statue of Jim Belushi for that movie that was like a big trophy, like a baseball trophy.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
And,
I remember this movie. I was trying to think of who the
Michael
star
Caine was a bartender, and he gives Jim Belushi this drink, and it changes his whole life.
Right.
But it was pretty fun. And so I had to go measure Belushi for this trophy, and got to meet him, and that's the closest I ever came to where I could actually talk and measure, somebody. We did a silicone rubber mold of his face so that the statue that I carved of him, they wanted to look exactly like him.
Okay.
So I took that, made a foam casting from that mask we took off of him, sawed the face off of my sculpture and glued his face on there. Carved the eyes open. It was an interesting process.
Yeah.
But that was fun. I did Last of the Mohegans.
Oh, okay.
That was probably the last movie I did, and that was enough for me. The movie business is really tough.
Yeah.
And people screaming and hollering all the time. You work, a 60-hour week is like normal, 6/10s. And then the closer you get to showtime, you might work around the clock to get something finished.
Yeah.
Or like, interesting story on The Last of the Mohegans, I waited and waited and waited to go on the job. They were shooting it up in Asheville. And I was broke spent the money from the last movie, and I was waiting for this to come up.
Yeah.
And Daniel Day-Lewis was in jail somewhere.
For real jail?
Yeah. And they were, I don't know, DUI or drunk and disorderly. I don't know what. But anyway, they were waiting to build the cave. If you ever saw the movie, it has a big cave and they jump out of the waterfall.
Yeah.
Well, they were waiting to build this until he got out of jail. So that's why I was waiting to go to work. And finally, the guy at the construction coordinator said, well, just come on up here and work construction. Mm-hmm. So I went up, I rented an apartment, and I worked for 3 days, and they cut the budget on the set, and they laid me off.
Oh, geez.
So now I had a place I'm paying for up there, and I still had to wait 6 more weeks before I went back to work, where they finally got freed Daniel Day-Lewis, and we got to build this cave, and it was a really interesting process.
Yeah.
That was the worst dynamics as far as the crew and the production designer and the art director were always hollering and spitting at each other. I just had enough, and that's when I came back to Akron.
Yeah.
So now I'd been looking for a studio because I had a trailer in Wilmington, North Carolina, where they had Carol Coast Studios down there. Mm-hmm. That's where I did the Turtles, and another House of Cards was not a big time movie, but it was Kathleen Turner and Tommy Lee Jones. Mm-hmm. They rented some stuff of mine and put it on set. That was pretty cool. I was just doing kind of more boring set work, carpentry work. But they did. I had this dog that I still have, and they're chained in the metal dog chain in the back of my truck. And the set designer saw it, and so they ended up renting the dog from me for the show.
Wow.
And just how much stuff they make for movies that they never use, like none of that stuff they rented came up in the movie. And the big statue that I made of Jim Belushi for Mr. Destiny, they put it into this big fancy office they spent a fortune on, and they put it in there I spent 6 weeks on it. They flew some girl from Atlanta to paint it, and they put it in the office set where it was supposed to go, and the director took one look at it and said, nah, it's too much, get it out of here.
Oh,
so luckily for me, they put it in the hallway of this sporting goods conglomerate. So at least it made the movie.
Oh, okay.
But that's the way things went.
Man.
Now, Last of the Mohicans was directed by Michael Mann, am I right? Yeah. Who made Heat.
Yeah.
A lot of other famous movies. But
he was a crazy guy.
And I was going to say,
he's live ammunition. And
I was going to say that he's known to be a pretty demanding director. Yeah, you're verifying everything I've ever heard about working for Hollywood movies. It does sound very stressful. Yeah.
And everybody be very tight-lipped with the end of a show, like where they're going next, because everybody really guarded their jobs.
Yeah,
I learned so much from this one guy's name was George Simcox. He was a mold maker, and I learned a lot from him. And he would not let me go through a whole process of, like, we took a 289 Ford Mustang motor, and we took it all apart and made molds of all the parts and put it back together. So it was a fiberglass car motor that the Ninja Turtles played catch with. But George wouldn't, he saw that I was pretty sharp, and he wouldn't let me, he would take me off a project at the end of it to where I wouldn't find out about what was, how you did the end. He would show me the process and how to do the hard work, but he wouldn't show me how to finish it up or take it out of the mold.
It's almost like a trade secret kind of thing.
Exactly. So
wow.
So it was difficult to make friends. It was difficult to get the next job because nobody would tell you where they were going and what's going on next.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. I didn't know that he worked in movies.
That's the movie.
Yeah, I'm so glad I saw that little blip.
Yeah,
but it was good fun. It's glamorous, but a lot of hard work once again.
Yeah, but it's kind of like better for the stories later
than
the actual experience, right?
And you made pretty good money only because you worked so many hours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just like I threw you off, Bob, on that. You didn't know he worked in movies. Mm-hmm. How about the fact that you made 2 7-foot tall shoes for a Barbie house?
Yep.
Huh?
Yeah, see, I knew I'd get you.
That was a classic saved my butt phone call.
First, what were they made out of? Was it
Fiberglass,
Okay.
pretty much.
All right,
Yeah,
go ahead.
fiberglass. It was right before Christmas, and I was flat broke, and the bills are rolling in. And I get this phone call from an event planner that I used to work with. We did a life-size, or not a life-size, but a scale model of the space shuttle for NASA. And it was hydraulically activated. They had like a 50-foot trailer with the space shuttle on it, and curtains opened. There was a model of the Lewis Research Center on the trailer, and the curtains opened, and they played Star Wars music, and then the shuttle would raise up. It was in the Cleveland Thanksgiving Day parade.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I get a call from this guy 5 years later, and he wants 2 Barbie shoes. He wants a 7-foot tall high heel with a waterfall in it. And
That sounds reasonable.
And I got 6 weeks.
Whoa.
And then he also wanted another shoe, but he didn't really know what kind of shoe yet. So, and I'm thinking I'm going to get a lot of support here.
Yeah.
Because I got no support.
Yeah.
They even made me paint the thing that this German designer that I did get talked to said we want it green. I go, okay, I painted it green. I brought some Corvette painter in. It cost me $1,500 to get this shoe painted green.
Really?
And so what ended up, and so I cranked out 2, and the other shoe was a giant clog with a sliding board inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all done out of fiberglass, and we were pushing the envelope of these materials because we were trying to do it so fast. I had 6 people in helping me at midnight, fiberglass in this one big clog shoe, and the heat from everything kicking off was melting the foam that I'd carved it out of. So I'd come in the next morning, it'd be all shrunk, and I'd get another 200 pounds of drywall mud and patch it up and start over.
Right.
What a pain.
Yeah.
And so they had all these people all over northeastern Ohio, and this was a big event company out of Cleveland. They were venerable. And they had people all over doing all these little things. There was a bunch. John Steiner lost his shorts. He did all these glass things.
Okay.
And so, it was this big rush because you had to get it into a container
Oh, sure.
and ship it to Germany. Because all this stuff was going to Germany, to Berlin for they had a 25,000 square foot Barbie house.
Okay.
And this shoe, the high heel with the waterfall.
I was wondering about the big shoe. At some point, John's going to tell us why there's a big shoe. Okay.
It was in the front, and the waterfall was functioning, and it was cool because I kept waiting for it to come on, but they delayed everything because everything was so screwed up when they got it to Germany because they were in such a big hurry. Right. They ended up changing everything. Like they painted the green shoe pink like it should have been painted to begin with.
Right.
So, so I keep waiting and waiting for this to open up. And they kept delaying it because they were fixing everything. So finally I clicked on the link that I had, and it's HuffPost had picked up. They finally opened, and it's a picture of a protester standing naked from the waist up on the toe of my shoe with a burning Barbie and a cross.
What?
Holding it up, and the Barbie's on fire. And there's a picture of the security guard leaning, helping her off the toe of my shoe and leading her off. But
God. So your shoe ended up in the middle of a political controversy.
And she had plastic life in plastic is not fantastic written across her boobs.
Oh my God.
And that actually made not that particular picture, but the shoe itself got a Time magazine. Time? Yeah, I think Time had a picture of it at some point.
Did you get paid for that? Did they pay you?
Oh, luckily.
Yeah.
Because this is, like I said, John Steiner lost his shorts.
Yeah.
Because these people were, since all these misfires and mess-ups,
yeah,
they were losing money. And I think it was the death knell for this event company out of Cleveland that had been around for 75 years. But the guy that I dealt with, this original event planner that had called me, gave me specific instructions on how to word my contract and who to make sure got it.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I had they'd send a truck and it'd go up to Cleveland to go in the container. Within a week, I'd get paid.
Oh,
Okay.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So thank goodness.
Yeah.
Where I think John Steiner had almost killed him because they owed him $60,000 or something.
Right.
Oh,
So that would have been the end of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so yeah, that's how it goes.
I'm thinking about as you're discussing these projects about the sort of the fantasy and the reality of the artist's life, because part of me is thinking, well, the artist can sit in his or her studio and conjure up this idea and then make the idea come to reality on their own terms, and and then it's a finished, and this is their creation, and a writer might be able to do that, or a composer might be able to do that, maybe. But the reality is that you're always working with and or for or at the behest of someone else.
Yeah.
And a lot of what you're doing is really out of your control.
A lot of times,
Yeah.
I like to regain as much as I can.
I would think so. Sure. Yeah.
But I don't mind because I'm trying to produce what they want.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
right.
If I think they got a bad idea, I'm going to tell them this is really not a good idea.
Right.
I mean, I try and do the best for them and also get my artistic
and just
statement out there.
Being honest on that level is going to be best for everybody. Right?
So because here locally you're best known for your metal work, but you're mentioning all this other stuff, fiberglass and wood. So do you still delve in all the different materials, or are you just metal now?
No, I do whatever the job dictates.
Oh, okay.
Because we're taking it all.
Oh, gotcha.
Somebody calls me up, I'll fix their lawn chairs.
Yeah, I saw that you would repair some vintage wrought iron, like railings and stuff.
Yep. I've done a lot of that. Total rehab of all varieties, gates and railings, and had an 1812 little graveyard with a metal fence around it. It was out in Medina, and a pine tree fell on the whole thing and just mangled it. And I had to chisel apart the pine tree and got what got mushed that was actually stuck in the pine tree, chiseled all that out, straightened it all out, and put it back original around the graveyard.
Wow. So Nick, mention some of John's projects that people would know instead of making John tell them.
Well, besides the Everett building, I know that you've done some of the sculpture on the north side, right? By Luigi's and Jilly's.
Yeah, the catfish over there and by Luigi's.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
That was one of the first pieces that I just made, and Mike Owen said, "Why don't you put something on this corner?"
Mm-hmm.
And so we put the catfish and put it up, and it's since been moved off that corner because they built those condos there.
Oh right, yeah.
But yeah, that was early on.
Mm-hmm.
And I still own it.
Okay.
Oh, you're renting. It's rented out, right?
No, I wish.
Oh,
I'd like to, I could send a bill to.
oh, okay. Oh, that's.
But no, yeah.
Yeah.
And also read that you have 4 archways on the towpath.
Those are one of my favorite projects.
Tell us about it,
Just
because
everybody sees them, and I'm so proud of that design because it was kind of a competition, and I ended up getting it. And then they wanted 4 of them. I mean,
how tall are they?
They're 13 foot across and about maybe 16 feet tall.
Oh, okay, large, yeah.
But I hardly ever get to make anything twice, let alone a nice fat project to make 4 of them.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I was thrilled, and it was wonderful working with Dan Rice and the Canal Coalition. Yep, great stuff.
Yeah. It's just interesting, and it's very cool that John has done this work that thousands of people have seen, tens, hundreds of thousands probably in time. And, you just take it for granted. A lot of people do, or they don't take it for granted. They say, well, that's cool, but they don't really know the backstory of it. And yet you're kind of an integral part of the community by creating that kind of stuff.
Well, I think it's important, even if people don't know who I am, when they see that, it burns an image in their mind.
Right.
What they saw, and they think about it.
Our listeners will know exactly what we're talking
And,
about.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
But that's what I have to give.
Right.
And, and that enhances people's lives, even if they don't really think about it. They do think back to that image that my piece burned in their mind, and they think of it. And they maybe smile or, so I really enjoy that I'm able to bring that to people.
Sure.
Yeah.
You should.
Through my art.
I'd be proud of it. I mean, it's a very, very cool thing.
And then all this stuff will last way longer than me.
On all of us.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Except maybe Brad.
He'll still be here.
Vampire Brad.
Cranking out the tunes.
That's right.
You have a goal now, Brad.
Never stop.
So this is From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with my co-host Nick Nicholas, and we are talking to artist and sculptor John Comunale. And I'm going to ask you the question now that we ask all of our guests.
Everybody.
Yes. You can't come into our show and not get this foisted upon you, which is, what is the kind of music that you like to listen to? And let's go a little further back.
When you were a kid.
Judging from your age, and you're roughly in the Nick ballpark, I guess, right, age-wise. So, what was the music that first inspired you or first caught your ear and you thought, man, I dig this?
When I first started listening to music as more of a goal almost, back in the 70s, I'd get a paycheck and I'd go buy whatever fuel I needed to help me listen. And I would buy like 4 or 5 record albums. And back then we were listening to a lot of Savoy Brown, the Byrds, 10 Years After.
Yeah.
I loved all the old blues stuff. That's I can remember in high school that 8 Miles High.
Oh yeah.
But that kind of music I always loved.
Yeah.
And now, through the years, I'm Bonnie Raitt, Nick of Time. I mean, I wore that completely out a dozen times. That album.
Yeah. So this is From Akron and Beyond. I am Bob Ethington with my co-host Nick Nicholas, and we are talking with artist John Comunale, and we were talking about his musical influences or music that he likes. And, of course, Akron is known for its music. And Nick is something of a legendary figure with his band, The Bizarros. And all kinds of different artists have come from this area. And do you happen to have any stories about any one of those particular artists?
Local people?
Yeah, local Akronite.
Well, I was living in Tucson at the time. And my ex-girlfriend there was Ann Field was a really good friend of Chrissy Hines. And I'd known Chrissy on and off since I was in grade school and lived just a couple of blocks from her through high school. And she had come to visit. She had been to Europe and met Ray Davies, maybe?
Davies of the Kinks. Yes.
Had met and hooked up and played some music, but then things didn't go well. Or didn't go any further, and she came back to the States. And she just keeps saying stuff like, I just want to have a band. I just want to have a band. Well, so she came to Tucson to visit, and they ended up staying at my house. And then Chrissy and I ended up going to this crazy wedding in New Mexico. These crazy people I knew there. And the weekend there and back. And when we got back to Tucson, she had a telegram from Ray Davies. I'm not even sure if that's exactly who it was from, but it was a plane ticket back to Europe to get the Pretenders going.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were there at the...
That's good local history.
Yeah, formation.
Via Tucson, huh?
I have a feeling there's some more stories about this New Mexico wedding, too. But we maybe don't want to go there. Was it in Taos by any chance?
I have a dragon that I'm working on. I just got it done. I've been working on it since 1975.
Whoa.
And it came from New Mexico around the White Sands Missile Range. These
yeah.
friends of mine were there surveying, and they found this walnut stump. And we winched it out of the ground and put it in a pickup truck, and I took it to Tucson, and I carved on it there everywhere I moved. Then I moved back to Akron. Then I moved to North Carolina, and I moved back to Akron, and the stump's been with me, and now it's a dragon fighting a two-headed snake.
Really?
And I still need to work on it a little more.
Yeah.
But it's almost finished.
Well, that's very cool. Yeah. That's a good story, too.
Yeah, I'm glad.
And now I like to listen to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Anything. I mean, my go-to is jazz.
Yeah.
Miles Davis.
Uh-huh.
So,
favorite of mine as well.
but I love to listen to Brad's specialty shows.
Oh, yeah, aren't they something?
The Monday, what's his, Julian Booker.
Oh,
Man, that
tell me
guy
about
is
that.
so awesome.
the
Culture Caravan.
Culture Caravan.
I don't do anything else on Mondays at 7 to 8. Listen to that.
Amazing. Yeah, world beat. It's kind of world beat and music from around the world, new and old.
Okay.
Yeah, fairly new on the station, too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Man, I love it. And it's just so different.
Yeah.
You know, everything he plays is like, man, listen to that. Because I switch stations a lot, and Pandora, I got that going on. I wore out every station I got on Pandora because I listen to it all day long every day.
You know, listening to you talk about this, John, it's a funny thing because now, like, you know, with the internet, et cetera, we have such exposure to such a wide variety of music, right? And, you know, every now and then there'd be something over the years that would suddenly kind of rise to the surface. I mean, a classic example of that would be reggae music, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there was 1 year no one really knew what reggae was. The next thing you knew, it was everywhere, and it was great. And similarly, as you were talking about that World Beat show, I was thinking about when I first heard a lot of the sort of Afro jazz, Afro pop stuff, like well, the great one is Fela Kuti, who is just like, I mean, he has this hypnotic music that it's that kind of music that you can put it on and you just want to keep hearing it. You know, it's like there's nothing else that's going to follow it that's going to sound quite that good.
I'll have to get more info on
King
that.
Sunny Ade and all kinds of different artists. Yeah, but
I went into a serious
now
ska
it's so
thing.
everywhere. It's hard. It's almost hard to curate it for yourself in a way because there's so much stuff out there. So, which is a great thing about the summit because they do a lot of that.
They do it for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go to Pandora and I'll wear something out, and then I'll go to New Cuts or I forget. There's different categories you can switch to and get the same type of music, but a little different deep cuts.
Right.
So
yeah.
Yeah, I went through a serious ska phase for a while. I loved them.
Yeah.
I loved them, especially in my studio. It gets really hot in the summertime. I'll just crank the ska and
Pretend you're
turn
in
the
Jamaica.
fans on and keep working.
Nick's first inspiration was Jimmy Durante, as I continue.
Jimmy Durante.
There's a long story behind this.
Yankee Doodle Bunny. We got to play that someday because it's the third time it's come up.
Didn't you do it? I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts with me. And ain't no banana, that's my nose.
First Jimmy Durante imitation, impersonation.
There we go. and maybe the last, too. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, this show's not time sensitive, so I know you have an event that's coming up that featured a lot of artists, right? Where you're at now, is besides Scott and Sandy, other people rent space from you too?
No.
They're just
but
artists that
this
you're...
artist, we're having a show coming up on June 8th, noon to 9, at my studio, and we're kind of spreading out around my studio, and I've got
And
John Sokol.
where is your studio?
540 South Main Street, Canal Place, downtown, old B.F. Goodrich factory.
Okay.
We're over top of the Missing Falls Brewery.
Okay.
That's where you
that
come
building.
in.
Yeah.
So, been there once again 30 going on 34 years.
Now, do you have like a shop there too that like people would walk in, and if you're there and they can buy
retail?
things? Yes.
I once again, since most of my work is I do custom work, I don't have a lot of stuff that sit around to sell. I have some things, but not. It's not really a retail. Retail
so I wanted to know for the people who are listening out there.
Uh-huh.
And then you were mentioning John Sokol. Is he going to be one of
John
those?
Sokol's in line for this show coming up. Jim Cooper, photographer, J.W. Cooper,
Okay.
who's set up permanently at the Jenks.
Okay.
Jennifer Vincic is a new artist coming into the fold.
Okay.
My wife, Molly Judge, has a boatload of paintings that'll be there.
Nice. Okay.
Scott Phillips is going to show his work. Todd Lawrence, who's a wonderful sculptor and artist, is going to have a major display.
There's a lot of artists that
So
are
half
gonna
a dozen.
featured.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
We did it right. We did a show like this right before COVID in 2020, just right before Christmas. And then we were going to do it again in June, and then the world changed.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but so we're cranking that back up for this June 8th.
For future reference, if you're when you do other shows like this in the future, getting repetitive here, how do you promote it? Like, is it online? I'm just wondering, like, for people to keep an eye open down the road.
Well, take a look at social media, folks, because some on Facebook, Instagram right now is the main thing.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll send out blanket emails, but that's pretty much how I get the word out.
Okay, great. Okay, so that would be something to keep your eye out.
That's how I found out about it, through Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, this has been From Akron and Beyond. I am Bob Ethington with my co-host, Nick Nicholas. Our guest has been artist, sculptor John Comunale. John, thank you so much for coming in. It's been fascinating talking with you.
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
Thank you so much.
You, Nick.
Thank you.
Glad to be on hand.
Okay, great. We'll see you all next time.